Hi, everyone. This is Nairobi Sanchez, and I'm here with our very esteemed guest. This is episode 7 of the 420 special for the Power to the Flower podcast. And I just have to say, the guest that I have with me today, I love her. I love all of the work that she's done, not only for the cannabis industry, but for Black and Brown communities as a whole, being a whole Black woman herself. So if y'all could just turn to this camera and just see our favorite state representative, Chynah Tyler.
Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations on the second annual 420 special.
Oh, thank you. You know, we excited over here. The big thing about these type of episodes is that I want to make sure that we highlight the pressing issues that are confronting us regarding cannabis, and specifically, like, you know, during the 420 month, if there's a big hot button issue or something to celebrate, like today, we want to make sure we talk about those things in a way that makes sense and hits home to a lot of individuals. So thank you for being here.
Of course, no question.
Okay. So before we get into it, y'all, I just want you to know who Representative Chynah Tyler is. Representative Chynah Tyler represents the 7th Suffolk District in the Massachusetts State House. Our state representatives have the honor and the pleasure of having her there. State Rep Chynah Tyler was also the chair of the Massachusetts Black and Brown Caucus a couple sessions ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but definitely made some work, and while she was there, championed a lot of issues that were cannabis related, and still to this day does do that. So also you have a lot of cool, you know, committees, but one in particular, you're the vice chair of the State Admin and Regulatory Affairs.
That's correct.
Committee. Okay, let's talk about it. There's a lot of regulatory
exactly.
things we got to change.
They're happy to do it.
Yes.
So.
And, you know, you have a very cool constituency because you represent Roxbury.
Yes.
Mission Hill.
Yes.
And Fenway.
Yes.
So that's a cool mix in Boston.
Oh, yeah, it's a great district, really. I love everybody in my district, and it offers so much, and I look forward to continuing to serve them. This is year number 10.
Yeah, congratulations.
A big year for me, so I look forward to 10 more and beyond.
Okay, you see, we got somebody in here for the long haul, y'all. Not Chynah, you know? We're here to take care of each other, so that's good that you're here for that. And I also wanted to mention, so you're actually from Roxbury, right?
Yes, born and bred there, generational, and I'm really honored to be able to now serve the community that poured so much and raised me, so It's been an honor.
That's so beautiful. So your family still lives in the city, like all in the same home and everything? Like, I'm asking because of gentrification.
Yeah,
okay?
within the 1 mile radius, some have, been displaced out. But luckily enough for my immediate family, we've been able to hold down the same home for the past 20 plus years in Nubian Square.
Okay, talk about it.
There. So I look forward to trying to create more opportunities for folks to be able to stay and raise their families and go to school and college, and then now work in the communities that they want to be in, like districts like mine.
You know what? That's beautiful. And it's funny because you mentioned Nubian Square, which is a relatively new term, not new to people who wanted it to be acknowledged as such.
Understood.
And we have our reasons why it should have been Nubian Square a long time ago.
Yeah.
But is that something in the particular, like in the district, that you find that you celebrate now, more frequently, with your communities? Is there annual celebrations of Nubian Square?
Well, there is many foundations. We have a Main Street. We have many Black businesses that have been in Nubian Square since forever that are doing really great. And so what our job is to be able to do is allow for their financial opportunities for them to access that, allow for them to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Inflation is happening. Everything is expensive. The price is going up on everything.
Okay. Gasoline.
And so small businesses like the businesses in Nubian Square, formerly Dudley Station, for those that still want to call it that, they are affected by that as well. And so we had some displacements recently, some folks that are, unfortunately maybe losing their space in Nubian Square. As far as their business is concerned. And so we're pushing back a great deal to try to make sure that those staple Black and Latino businesses to be able to can continue to call Nubian Square a home. Okay.
Well, how is one way that you are doing that you feel has been most effective so far?
Yeah. We have a lot going on in the city of Boston. Issue topic that folks are going to be very familiar with is the epidemic that's happening over at Mass and Cass. When we talk about issues that predominantly affect neighborhoods that are white neighborhoods, it's also happening in a Black neighborhood at a disproportionate rate. So Nubian Square has been has had its challenges as of recently, and we've been doing something about that. So we've forwarded hundreds and thousands of funds to making sure that we have 24/7 support, whether that be recovery support and or security in Nubian Square to help manage the issue that is happening there as it relates to just the drugs, and
drug use,
things have been. They've been up and down, but I'd say as of lately, they've been much better.
Yeah.
And that's been in partnership with the Nubian Square Main Streets, or Roxbury Main Streets, they call it, in Nubian Square. So a lot of changes and a lot of great partnership, and I'm really happy that that we're able to offer that support.
Yeah, and I think, I'm glad that you're doing that. Congratulations.
Of course, yeah.
Because the community in that particular area, I know that in that area we have like Doña Habana, which is a Cuban restaurant that I love, but also like up the street, there's like BMC Medical Center, and like they service so many of the folks that are in that target population you're talking about.
Right.
So I know that there's special street teams and people who like go and actively like provide services, but one of the things that makes change is always policy.
Right.
So the fact that you are doing that is amazing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And congratulations.
Of course, no question.
Yeah.
No question.
So there's a whole bunch of nonprofits, and you serve like so many different types of hats and chairs and things like that. So I want to give credence to some of those things, but I did want to talk about just like as you are in the State House legislating, there's always somebody that might come to you and be like, I got a bill idea.
Okay. All the time. Okay. And we accept them because you never know.
Exactly. And how it can make it, it can make a change. So can you just give us a little bit of insight on that? And I ask because some of our audience members want to know, how does a bill become a law in the State House, and more specifically, if they got a personal experience that could translate from cannabis per se, that they have a representative like you who's accessible. So how does that happen? Give us a little 1-2.
Well, again, my job is to represent the people. We are state representatives of the people of the Commonwealth, and my people just happen to be the 7 Suffolk District people, Roxbury, Mission Hill, Black and Latino people of color, generally speaking, So their stories definitely influence like the legislative priorities as set forth. I do what I do because I want to make sure that the lives of folks that live in my district and that look like folks live in my district are generally speaking just better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so how a bill becomes a law is exactly that. My job is to be able to make sure I get out there, go to events, meet people, spend time with people, have office hours, and just be available to folks to be able to share their stories, because a lot of times like it's the smallest things that can make a change, that you can change legislatively that can impact hundreds and thousands of people across the Commonwealth. And how you do that and how you learn about a lot of that stuff is just simply through listening and just engaging with folks. And so we file bills every year. So our sessions are on two-year basis. So at the beginning of the 2 years, we file bills based off of a lot of what we've heard from our districts, and they go through a process. Every bill gets a bill number. Then it gets a hearing. You're able to come down to the State House and give your testimony and influence, what the future of the bill looks like through your particular story. If you weren't a part of, the bill actually coming online, because once you open up, Pandora's box and file a bill, there's always hundreds of people that stories, resonate with what the bill issue topic is. And so we create space for folks to be able to share their testimony. If they're not able to come to the State House, you can do it online. You can tap in virtually through our hearings. We have hearings that we have online. You can
I've
send
been those to those.
You can. We try to make it as accessible as possible. You can send testimony in, or you can meet with us any day of the week, 7 days a week. We're available, you know what I mean, to hear what folks have to say about any given issue topic. And then once, the committee considers that bill and has heard every person that would like to speak on whatever issue topic is brought forth, then we go and we consider the bill and try to push it forward if it makes sense. If we think that it can make a big enough impact on the folks that, it's affecting, then we push it out of committee and try to get it through the legislature, both the House and the Senate. The House, where I'm at for sure first, and then the Senate and then over to the governor to be able to, for its final passage and its final signing. And if any changes need to be made after that, we're happy to do that. But that's generally the process. So folks, if y'all have issues y'all want to talk about, if y'all have questions, please go on the legislature website, type in your address, your zip code, figure out who your rep is, and they're more than happy to figure out, to have a conversation with you about literally any topic you'd like to talk about. We're always open to hearing folks' ideas on different issue topics.
Yeah, and I would say that's true. I think especially you guys have this really cool thing called legislative aids, okay?
Yes.
Legislative aids, and anybody who really works at the State House as an employee for like a state representative or even a senator, they have this unique insight because they're like, listen, this is how the process goes. So if you're ever trying to figure something out, and like, let's say Rep. Chynah Tyler's at an event doing a speech, something where you're talking to your community, and the person that's actually available is one of your aides.
Yep.
They can probably tell you, like, actually, we're going to file this, like, this time.
Oh, yeah, they know, for sure.
They be knowing, okay?
Yeah. And then we also, too, go, like, above and beyond, like, to make sure that we're accessible. We have a direct email. We have me. I give out my personal number to folks if they really have an issue.
That's
because the neighborhoods that we represent, if folks are calling their state rep, you better believe that the issue has gone well above and beyond where it should have went. And we just want to make sure that we're responding to folks. And so all that stuff is on my website. You can check it out, and y'all can call me, reach out.
Okay. Well, I love that. We love an accessible queen, y'all. Well, one of the things, too, so we'll get into some of the bills in just a minute, but if you are a constituent of yours, meaning somebody who lives in the district, typically some people identify them as also voters, but, like, if you don't vote, you're still a constituent. Right?
You live in the district you're in.
Yeah. If you're not a citizen, you're still a constituent, you know what I mean, in some regards. So people just kind of should know that distinction. But if you, let's say, have a issue with the state agency, it'd be you I'd be calling.
Absolutely,
as my state rep, right?
Yeah, so as of lately, we've had a lot of issues around unemployment. Your typical, story of folks reaching out to any given agency, and they may not get a person. They may be talking to automated voice person for, hours and hours.
I called 3 times.
It just happens, and if you reach out to us, someone's always going to be available. Somebody's definitely going to reach out within a reasonable amount of time and get back to you and try to help you be able to create the connection between whatever agency you're looking to connect with and the individual, but more importantly, making sure that you actually talk to a live person. It happens, and that's why we're there, to be representing people.
Absolutely. I love that. I only say that because when I used to work in like the federal level, what we used to do was similar in vein. If there's a constituent who needs help with Social Security, you can call your U.S. senator or your congressperson. So on the state agency levels, like the Department of Revenue, something we should taxes, you're a taxpayer, so you have the right to reach out to your legislators and ask, can you intervene on my behalf? So all right, so let's talk about some of the big stuff that just came out of the State House today. So we have this really unique thing in Massachusetts that because cannabis is relatively young, it's also maturing. And with it are the state reps that started in the inception, which we're going to talk about your role in that, right, as chair at the time of the Massachusetts Black and Latino Caucus, but also you were on the Cannabis Committee at some point.
Something like that.
Either way, always closely filing bills, and this is one of the things we
keeping close eye on the issue because of everything the innovation that it brought forth. Okay,
yes. And so today, the bill that was passed, we're going to give the docket number and everything, but it was formerly called the Act on Modernizing the Commonwealth's Cannabis Laws, and it was filed as House Bill number 5350, and is relevant for you. Can you talk to us, number one, how did this bill get started? If you know some of the key players, feel free to mention them too. But then tell us your role and your point of view and how you handled all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this conversation for me goes all the way back to 2018. That's when we established the adult use of cannabis here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And at that time, it was my first years in office. But what I did know is that this was the first industry that the Commonwealth was going to establish since prohibition, since alcohol, y'all. And
talk about it.
When there's an opportunity to be able to establish a commission like that, when there's an opportunity to be able to establish something like that, you want to make sure that you're understanding what that means for the everyday person. And what that means for the everyday person is a tax generating opportunity for our Commonwealth to be able to make money. Folks are going to be buying cannabis. They're going to be buying into the cannabis industry. There's going to be taxes that go along with whatever we're establishing. So the industry was a baby. It got established. And the role that I played in that was making sure that equity is a big part of that. Again, I represent Roxbury, Black, Latino, and communities of color, and making sure that folks have a fair share, a fair opportunity to actually participate in something like that, given all of our financial background, which is very limited, and our access or lack thereof of access to capital, making sure that folks have a fair share, a fair opportunity to participate in that was very important to me. And so the bill passed, but the one particular role that I played was filing an amendment, which then got included in the bill eventually signed by the governor at the time, to be able to create the social equity program.
Amazing.
And it does so many different things, but it allows for you to be competitive in the industry.
Yeah. And I will say, as we know that the Social Equity Trust Fund took mad long to roll out.
Right.
This is like, we're on its second cycle and some people haven't received, or actually we're on the third one now, but it has opened up slowly to some people at first, and then to a larger group, and then to a larger group. And so they're learning, just like you guys probably learned in the State House, just because you give something policy, it may not work if the people that are receiving that policy are just like, listen, y'all don't know what the hell you wrote, right?
Right.
So
happens, right.
That's why,
nothing's perfect.
Nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
So you start one way, and then this one was called the Act on Modernizing the Commonwealth's cannabis laws, because it was trying to become more current to what people have experienced.
Right. So just case in point, right? The social equity program is literally that, a program, educational program, educational opportunity for folks to be able to know how to apply for a license or how to get involved in the industry. That was 2018, a part of that 2018 omnibus bill.
Amazing.
However, a couple of years later, we actually established the Social Equity Trust Fund, because what we heard from folks was that, yes, I know how to apply. I know how to get my foot in the door. You guys are great at making sure that I understand the entire process, and that I knew how to make sure I checked off every single small box for my small business to then be able to compete. But I don't have $100,000 to make it happen. Or, hey, you guys want me to, I have a retail spot and I want to open up a storefront, but I still got to pay the lease on this spot in order to check off the boxes to be eligible to be able to get my license. And leasing a retail spot is not the cheapest thing, you know what I mean?
Not in Roxbury, not in...
while there was the social equity program that had to then was born the Social Equity Trust Fund. And so what I've been pushing a bill to be able to do for the past couple of years is to increase the amount of tax revenue that goes into the Social Equity Trust Fund. So when folks spend money in the cannabis industry right now, 15%, and it's always been that, goes into the Social Equity Trust Fund, and then those funds then get redispersed to folks that, can show that they are social equity candidates to then get into the cannabis industry. But 15%, I'd like it to turn into 16, 17, 18%, and I've been filing a bill to be able to increase that tax package, so that way we can have more folks be financially competitive in the cannabis industry. So
thank you for that. And I think that, I remember initially there was this conversation of should we go lower, start at 12, should we go higher, go to 25, 20, and then eventually was met in the middle. So I think that some people were some were I wish we would have pushed, and others were this I can take.
Oh, it's always still a live conversation, and I will be continuing to file that bill over and over again, because again, more opportunity you give folks to have access to capital that look like us, the more equitable the industry is going to be, and the more live it's going to be. You know what I mean? So
absolutely. Yeah. I know personally that did get access to the Social Equity Trust Fund, myself included, right?
Nice.
And so the idea is to have a source where, even if you do have some capital, right, initial seed money, maybe your friends and family helped you, they're trying to buy into your dream, essentially.
Right.
But after a while, you can be going to your family members and be I need another extra $1,000. Every so often it just gets exhausting, because then you're that cousin now.
Yeah, and then also too with the wealth gap, the likelihood of somebody that looks like us being able to ask your cousin for $100,000 is very slim. You know
exactly.
what I mean? Some families are lucky to be able to have that. Not saying that we don't have wealthy Black, Latino, and families of color. I'm not saying that, but the likelihood is very slim. So we try to create more opportunities for folks to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
And why? Because a lot of folks don't understand that cannabis is not legal on a federal level. So you cannot go to Bank of America, you cannot go to Citizens Bank, cannot go to TD Bank and ask for a loan to be able to start your cannabis business. It just doesn't happen. So that's the reason why the social equity program or the social equity trust fund is very important.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that, because I think sometimes people forget, but also even when I talk about it, I also mention like the Small Business Administration, like the SBA on the U.S. federal level, like any of those things, you can't qualify. Okay, you can't do none of that stuff. And the banks, because they're regulated by the FDIC, the federal, insurance, whatever. But basically, those who insure the banks to make sure that they have money need to make sure it's not coming from a place that's not an illicit source according to federal law.
Right.
But there are now, because we have some states that are legal, there are some banks, especially here in Massachusetts, that operate with cannabis companies, and then you're able to use your operating funds as long as it's monitored and goes through a whole bunch of things from a particular memo. Anyway,
a lot of things,
but there's a lot of compliance, and so you got to find the right banks.
Right.
And all right, well, thank you for mentioning that. I'm just going to move on to the next one. I mean, is there any particular provision of this bill that you are most proud of, that you just are like super over the moon, like, y'all, we got this passed?
Yeah. Well, I'm just really happy that the leadership currently, Chair Donahue, who was the House Chair, Senator Gomez, who is the Senate Chair, the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, the Governor, that they all, had co-signed on to making this happen, that the Governor then eventually agreed to be able to sign this bill. So, like, it really does take a collective effort for anything like this to happen. So, generally speaking, I'm just happy that they continue to acknowledge that this industry needs to be corrected and needs to be just given as much love and support as possible, because we continue to, although this is the first big package that we've taken up since 2018, they've done some small tweaks over the last couple of years as it relates to the industry. And so, like, I'm just really grateful that folks are acknowledging that, like, they want to do right by this industry, because this was the first one that we did since Prohibition, but then on his toes was sports betting. So we have a lot going on. Yeah, and that's just a lot. You know what I mean? So I'm just glad that they acknowledge that this is something that's very important. And so there are many provisions of the bill, but what I would like to see more in bills like this is that, for me as a Black woman, the reason why I'm excited about this bill, because this screams criminal justice reform. This is criminal justice reform for a lot of us, and so I would like to see more opportunities for folks that have certain things on their records, particularly as it relates to cannabis, whether that be a felony or whatever it is, be able to participate more in the industry. And, like, sometimes folks aren't eligible to be able to participate because of their background, but we've done a lot to be able to make some changes so that more folks can open up the door for more folks that unfortunately were affected by the war on drugs, really, to be able to participate in the industry, whether that be the workforce, which is really big. Housing. When you apply for a job, you got to pass a background check, and so we want to make sure that folks are able to participate in that, but also too in leadership roles as well. And so I'm really happy that we're able to just continue to just add on to what the industry looks like and correct it. You're still going to see a lot of social justice. So
absolutely, you're speaking my policy love language. Okay, everything from Black and brown folks, the war on drugs and repairing all of those harms. It really is a form of reparations. I mean, we don't talk about it enough, but do you feel that this is like some ways that even the country can move forward on reparations? Oh yeah, absolutely. Whatever opportunity we have to be able to close, like, the income gap,
I'm all about it. It could be cannabis, it can be supporting your local small business, it can be the sports betting industry, which does have a equity component attached to it as well. I'm all about it, because what I want to see is to make sure that folks have an opportunity to be able to thrive. Their children, the next generations of whatever your family is, like, have the opportunity to be able to thrive, whether that be in small business, in school, whatever it is, and access to capital and just workforce and development, which this bill does, is a big part of that.
Absolutely. I love that so much. Thank you. So I also, you talked about jobs, okay? And Ryan was on the podcast, I
heard. I saw. And watched.
And so Ryan Dominguez, for those who may have already seen the episode, is the executive director of the MCC, the Massachusetts Cannabis Coalition. Hi. And so prior to that, Ryan was also the executive director of Mass Cultivated, at which
he was.
You worked to create this bill that funded, I guess, some of the initiatives as well to be able to help those impacted by the war on drugs to get those jobs. And it was called the first jail to jobs program in the cannabis industry in the nation.
Right, in the nation, yeah.
That's a huge feat.
Yep.
So is there other ways that you're working with Mass Cultivated, like currently? Is there anything that you're really proud of? Anything you want to mention?
Yeah, so, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts was the first to be able to establish the social equity program nationwide. And then on top of that, we've done so many firsts, just being one of the first to be able to legalize the adult use of cannabis. And out of that is creating the first in the nation jails to jobs workforce and development program, because again, that's what this is all about, making sure that we pay our dues to those that were incarcerated, unfortunately, behind cannabis, which is now legal. Now we owe it to them, right?
Yeah.
And so a big part of that, we recognize that sometimes folks may not want to own a business. They want to be involved into the workforce. They just want to work. They may be just recently released, post-release. And just getting out of prison or just being recently released from the House of Corrections, DOC, or the federal penitentiary is very difficult to be able to gain employment because you have a CORI. And so we work together to be able to, Ryan establish, obviously the Cultivate Ed program, which pretty much allows for folks to be able to go through a small training series, education. You get a chance to have a paid internship.
That's right.
You're out there in the field. It's a great program. For those that don't know about it, please make sure you do your research on it and apply, because they are still taking folks, and they do have their cohorts that are still around now. And once you graduate, then you have a guaranteed job. In the industry, because you had already interned there as a part of the program. And it's not your typical program where you're in it for 7 months, you don't get no placement, you don't get a job.
No, they got you.
That's a sad song that I would never want to see in anything that I'm supporting. If I'm supporting somebody who was formerly incarcerated, we want to make sure that we're getting them results. And the results of the Cultivate Ed program is that 100% of the people that have went through the program have been placed in workforce and development opportunities of their choice. And so I look forward to many more years of the Cultivate Ed program. It is growing. It was a baby a couple of years ago, but it is growing. It's now on to, I don't even know what cohort it is. A couple of folks graduated in the cohort, the last cohort. They had an expungement event at Roxbury Community College, and a couple of folks graduated from the class, from the cohort, and are now getting into the industry. And so I'm just really grateful to be able to be a part of that and make sure that equity, too, also reaches the workforce, and that people in the workforce look like folks that look like our communities.
Absolutely. And so for those, especially like if you run a cannabis small business, if you are Black and brown and you want to partner with Mass Cultivated, there are also sponsorship and partnership opportunities with the industry, with Mass Cultivated, so that you can meet those workforce development goals, but also you're getting like people who understand it and also have been impacted by the system,
right?
Which I love. And my time at Mass Cultivated, I really enjoyed just working with some of the fellows, like the people who are coming to the program are really thirsty to understand, like, I be going to the dispensary down the street. So, like, how do I find a job?
How do I work there? Yeah.
How do I work there? Yeah. How do I get, my record sealed or expunged, which is like, you have multiple options.
Yeah. Which is a part of the program.
It's a part of the program.
So your record for free, y'all.
For free. You never got to pay. And, there are reputable lawyers that are Greater Boston Legal Services. And that's like what you want. They're community bred people who really care about seeing your successes manifest. Yeah.
And the reason why that's important is because any business that gets into the cannabis industry has to have a certain plan. They have to have a plan of positive impact. We call them PIPs.
PIPs, yep.
Plan of positive impact. And a big part of that plan of positive impact is that you have to have a certain amount of people that work in your company.
Be diverse.
Be people of color, right? So the Cultivate Ed program helps catapult you into those spaces, and companies are hungry for folks that look like us, that want to be involved and work in these different companies. It's not just your front end retail. There's many different parts of the industry with which folks really aren't familiar with. You can be doing delivery, you can be driving, you can be doing the back end, you could be cultivating, you can be doing a lot of stuff. You could be making candies for a company. You can do a lot. Trimming is listen. I visited a place and I was just like, wow, everything happens here. Yeah, and I was just very impressed with
like
what was happening.
Facility.
We legislate, but we never really sometimes see it implemented and see it like in real life. And so, very impressed. So, like, if you're interested in a workforce and development opportunity, please Google Mass Cultivate Ed and check out the program.
Absolutely. And so actually, I love that you mentioned that, and we can just continue to pivot to some of our other questions. Sure. But the one thing I did want to mention about the Mass Cultivated program is that when you do intern, you also learn maybe this wasn't like the type of job I wanted. So you have allies within the program, like whoever's on the program side, to say to the employer, like, hey, do you have other opportunities? Because so-and-so would like really want to try maybe cultivation over inventory. And, you know, all of these jobs, like, depending on like the scale, you can grow through a company. Like you can literally grow with a company from its inception to a different, you know, whatever, to all the way to the top at C-suite levels, which we talked about.
Yeah. And one thing that I actually really like about the Cultivate Ed program is that it started off just workforce and development, but then it grew. It also teaches you about the industry and what it is like to be in the industry as an owner. And so some folks figured out over time that they didn't necessarily want to work for a company. They wanted to be the company. So the program certainly supports you getting educated on what the industry actually is and how to take that pathway to go whatever road that it is that you want to go down, but certainly workforce and development oriented first and foremost.
Absolutely. And having consulted some folks who are on the entrepreneurial route, I know that it is difficult trying to figure out what you want to do, but the best way is to know which track to kind of go through. So you mentioned delivery, you mentioned cultivation, but there's also product manufacturing as a business type, and then there's retail. You know, there's a couple other things you can do with product manufacturing. You can make like a drink, you can make gummies, you can make all those things.
They have a lot
of things, but there's a supply chain. And so if you really want to get involved or are curious, there's so many type of businesses and a way that you can create within, but also be an ancillary business, which we also talk about too.
Right.
So, back on the legislative cannabis policy stuff. So this right here is what I'm curious about. Obviously, you mentioned the process, and I don't think we got to talk about the role of joint committees.
Sure.
But the role of joint committees, especially with Rep. Donahue and Senator Gomez, really is like the convening of minds and deciding like some final pieces, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And so when the Joint Committee finished with the policy, they chucked it back to the House, and then there were some pieces of it like an increase in how much we can buy per day.
Yeah. So we want to make sure that the businesses that are involved in the cannabis industry that are particularly, you know, the equity businesses, the black and brown businesses are competitive, right? And so like, there's different phases to making sure that you're competitive. You can be a small startup company, and we want to make sure that we're investing in small startups that are just, again, exactly that, mom and pop style. If you graduated to be an actual small business and now you have a couple of employees and you got a payroll going on, we want to make sure that we're able to invest in you being able to upscale from small mom and pop up into a small business. And then once you're a small business or you become a big business, sustainability is an important part of that conversation. We want to make sure that you're sustainable and that you can reach whatever trajectory you hope to be able to do. And so investing in that in a social equity program checks off all those boxes. It offers technical support. It offers so much that you can connect with to be able to make sure your business is what you hope it to be on all different levels. And so I'm really happy about that piece.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Thank you for that. And I think that one of the things that we talked about just individually is what we want to see also with like the Social Equity Trust Fund as well. We have this thing called areas of disproportionate impact, and that it determines, who exactly is social equity. So, you know, it's interesting to me because I have the personal belief that, you know, if you are of a certain skin tone, you're going to be targeted more for drugs in general. So that leaves us just, if you are born this way, more susceptible to a particular type of racial profiling.
Right.
And so because of that premise alone, to me, I'm like, it don't matter about geography. It don't matter about the, you know, obviously data points is really important when determining some of these things. So I feel like it should be more racially based, but in a day and age where we're talking about DEI initiatives being stripped, you know, like that is really difficult to balance. So we have the ADI communities measurement, and your communities all are represented in that map, correct?
Something like that, yeah. Well, so we have the ADI communities, and unfortunately it goes by the census tract. And sometimes the census tract may not have all of Roxbury, for example, all of Mason Square in Springfield, or all of the part of Hayville, or all of the part of Lawrence that all the Dominicans are in. It may just be scattered, So, for example, in Boston, one of our communities does check off the box in Roxbury, but maybe not your side of Blue Hill Lab, and one side of Blue Hill Lab is in, and the other side of Blue Hill Lab isn't, because of the census tract. And so that's one of the pieces that I feel like could be tweaked a little bit more in the future, to be able to be more inclusive of folks' demographics and where they live.
Absolutely. And the reason why, and I can pin it this right here, but the ADI communities doesn't factor in, y'all, like, what was once really like a more upper class neighborhood may now today not necessarily be that.
Right.
And
gentrification
happens, and so people are always being moved around.
Right.
So that is why I have a problem with it, because I know someone who bought a house in like West Roxbury, but like is from and is raised in Roxbury proper, you know what I mean? And so they should, based on that demographics alone or whatever, be having like the accessibility to apply and be social equity.
Yeah.
So
hey, that's federal legislation that we can try to reach out and influence and be a part of in the future. Again, this is how a bill becomes a law, through conversation, through talking to your people. So I'm definitely interested in continuing that conversation for sure, and figuring out what we can do to try to be more inclusive on those pieces, because again, everyone that it wasn't affected by the war on drugs definitely deserves to be a part of this conversation, if you wish to.
Absolutely. And that's why I think the criteria should just be a little bit more less data focused on certain things and more realistic. And that's why we talk about when policy rolls out, if it don't make sense to the people, we got to adjust. And so I'm excited to see where that's going to go.
Well, and honestly too, like, I keep a close eye on a lot of those numbers, and who's getting funding, for example, through the Social Equity Trust Fund.
Right.
And we just had the first couple of rounds of folks be able to receive funding gratefully. And what I did notice, which actually this is the first time I'm actually talking about this, but I hope to push back and be able to make this change in the future, was that folks need to have a certain address or live in a certain demographic in order to be able to apply for the social equity funding. And when I got back some of the data on who got awarded the money, which I was happy for every single person on that list, some folks didn't have an address listed. And then when I reached out and I asked, the commission, hey, some folks have NA on the address, and we specifically want to make sure that they're within certain areas across the Commonwealth that have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. I wasn't really enthused about the response that I got. And so they're going to be hearing from me for sure.
Okay.
On pushing back on making sure that all those different, metadata is provided when we're serious about giving out information or giving out funding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you touched on that, because this comes back to the role of municipalities. If, Lawrence, I'm going to just use Lawrence because I talk about Lawrence enough where people should
Lawrence,
know, right? Yeah. That's my hometown. But Lawrence is so interesting and unique in the sense that, we got mad Dominicans there, right? The mayor is mad Dominican. Everybody that legislates is either Dominican or Puerto Rican and one white person, okay?
Okay.
But the reason why culture plays a role in here is that Dominicans typically have the perception of the war on drugs still in their minds. So the ones who are legislating have that same type of stigma that hasn't gone away because of the culture. So what that does then in perpetuity is that we see that some people who, if you were raised in Lawrence, and now that Lawrence is classified as an ADI community, although one time it was not, right? And that's because of data. If you are in that place, you can't have your business in Lawrence. And you want to know why? Because towns had the chance to opt in or opt out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So when some of the communities were like, we're not opting into this because of blah, 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 it's weed, they also opted out of local tax benefits and an opportunity to increase different types of businesses that could have brought them more revenue. Right. So that is interesting because of the Social Equity Trust Fund. When we got that list back, right, we saw that the people that got money may not necessarily look like those who are impacted by the war on drugs on a racial profiling standpoint, but also their businesses are operating in areas that may not be ADI. And the reason is because they go based on where that town is allowing them to operate. So if a town like Hudson that may not have been on the ADI list, is allowing for some of these social equity applicants to operate there. That means that the business got the social equity trust fund money, but not necessarily the town that they come from. So it goes now to the town in which they're operating the business
Absolutely,
in. Yeah. So it's a little complex.
It's something that needs to be, again, very gray, and something that needs to be, continue to be discussed. And I'm sure that there will be bills that are going to be filed next session or in the future. So definitely encourage the folks to make sure that they do their part and come down to the State House and share your story.
Well, on that topic here, what kind of accountability measures do you see that the Social Equity Trust Funds needs in order to effectively, target individuals? Like, how do they stay accountable? We have people like you. Give them a quick, hey.
We want to know who's getting the money.
Period.
We want to know who's participating. We want to know who has been reached out to. We want to know what type of media has been put out there, so that way we know that folks in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, and Springfield, and Lawrence, and Worcester, and all communities of color across the Commonwealth know about the opportunities that are before them. We want to make sure that we have all that data. So accountability for us as legislators looks like all the metadata that comes along with that. Who have you reached out to? What type of events have you pulled off? Did you do any informational sessions? Did you send out any emails? Do you have social media? Do you have Instagram, Facebook? Did you, and when folks then do apply, can we see the folks that have applied? And that's going to be a real telling story of the work that was put in before, the application was out there. And then once folks get the money, then that's even more telling, because we're going to be able to see what their race, what their agenda, where they live, and all those different things, and kind of map for us. And data's always going to tell a story.
Yeah.
I was particularly disappointed with the last round of funding. I'm okay, you know what I'm saying? But as far as the last round of funding, because I saw, as a person who is pushing for social equity trust fund, the social equity program, social equity generally speaking in the State House, and just the whole conversation, only one business on a list of all the businesses listed said Roxbury, and that's a problem for me, Again, I'm very happy for every single person that ended up on that list, but I would like to make sure that, again, was that because there was less, media and marketing in this particular neighborhood? Is that because folks don't know about that they can get access to capital? What are the reasons why folks didn't apply? So essentially, I should see every single city and town that, that is predominantly Black, Latino, and people of color listed equitably on the list of folks that are applying. And so I just want to be able to see more, and I hope to be able to be a part of that conversation, because, again, it's a collective effort. And again, the Cannabis Control Commission is a baby. It was only founded so many years ago, and we just, again, did our second reform trying to tweak the industry. And so maybe that needs to be a part of the third reform whenever that comes in the future, or just maybe changing their policy in the future to be able to make sure that more folks know about this opportunity that's before them, because it's just not your typical small thing. This is an entire industry, and in 25 years from now, as Black and Latino people, we don't want to look back and be shoulda, coulda, woulda. We want to make sure that all those things are right today, so that way in 25 years from now, you have enough money for your kids to be able to go to college.
Yes.
You can compete financially on whatever it is that you're trying to do. You can buy a house or do whatever it is from the money or the funds generated from your small cannabis business that you started back in 2026. We want to see that for people.
Absolutely.
We're always really happy for people's success, and so we want to make sure that that's a reality for a lot of folks that want to participate in the cannabis industry.
I love that. You are just so community oriented. I love that about you, and in general, we want people to see that when they do these bills, you're impacting multiple people.
Yeah.
So I think that, as far as if I can answer that question too, in a sense of accountability to me means not only do you have applicants from Roxbury, but how are we also connecting with the local municipality to say, hey, we want to get a list of identified areas where cannabis zoning is permissible.
Yeah. That's
right?
Yes, very difficult. Yes.
Because, and then the thing is that every building is different. Boston is their zoning. The city of Boston zoning is not like the city of Lowell.
It's very unique.
It's very unique.
We'll be very nice about it.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. It's a very unique situation in that some buildings may be zoned for one thing, but even within that same building, you might have something else that is not zoned for, even though it might seem that way.
Yeah.
So an example would be, this building right here could be zoned for, industrial use. But even though you can have a manufacturing facility that's technically industrial, it's not zoned for cannabis use.
Right.
And sometimes it's zoned for cannabis delivery, but not cannabis cultivation.
Right.
So
yeah, and even, you know, what tricked me out with that whole conversation was that when we were getting into the weeds of, you know, establishing an industry and we were doing a zoning and just talking about like just the zoning provisions, from the 500 feet that you have to be from a school,
the buffer
or
zone.
the buffer zones, right? Like, does that mean that it's from doorstep to doorstep, or does that mean that it's from curb to curb?
Address to address.
Yeah, address, very, very gray. So.
Before we move on from like the big cannabis reforms, you mentioned that, you know, there's big changes obviously that happened.
Yes.
One of those changes, and I'll mention the list of like the top lines of what the bill did, but we have 5 commissioners.
Right.
And it is not uncommon to have multiple commissioners in a Massachusetts state agency, but, you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it don't. Okay.
Yeah. We've seen a lot happen.
Yes, we have a lot of scandals, a lot of different things to give us pause and say we need to consolidate power a little bit and streamline exactly who has appointing authority. So with the bill, can you talk about what the 3 positions are and who has appointing authority?
Yeah, so the new bill has changed completely how that's done. Before there were many different appointees, different commissioners did different things. Now we're down to simply the governor appointing all the commissioners, and then there'll be 3 commissioners, period. What I'm most excited about is that we were able to keep that one social equity oriented commissioner, which is super important for us. And so I would like to make sure that we also see Black, Latino, and people of color on that board to be able to help give direction to the future of what the Cannabis Control Commission can be.
Yes.
It's a great effort. It's a great commission. I'm just really proud about the work that has been done with everyone that has served in the past, up, down, left, and right, no matter what their views are. Like, it has come so far from where it started back in 2018. And so more equity on that lens a little bit more is what I would like to see for sure.
I would agree with that. I mean, we have a great host of commissioners, but you know, not losing social equity, like that seat, I was worried about that too. And I interviewed Armani White, for those of you want to look back at the episode last season. And that was one of the things that he had mentioned too. He was like, we want to make sure that one of those seats stays in social equity. So it's a big win for Mass Eon and for small businesses like Armani's that are Boston-based, Black-owned, and also our social equity businesses. Another couple things that it did, we talked about the raising of the ounce limit. So instead of just having a limit of like 1 ounce per time of purchase,
you know, continuing on with, you know, the idea of, you know, making sure that when there's big reforms that are happening, me personally adding on pieces that I'm hearing from my community about like what's important. And that's what I heard most from my community is that we want to be able to increase the purchase limit. So that way, essentially, the small business or the cannabis business makes more money, can make more money throughout the day.
Yes.
So just creating more space for the small business, again, to be able to be sustainable. And I'm really happy about that. And I look forward to continuing to see how folks are doing revenue-wise in the future with the increased purchase limits.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm happy to see as a consumer.
It doesn't have to be flower. It could be different things. You know what I mean? Because cannabis is all things. It's not just flower.
That's right.
You know what
That's
I mean?
right.
So, yeah.
But if you're like me and you prefer flower over like vapes, you know, and all those things, but you can mix it up. And there's talk of how that's going to look like for drinks and things like that.
Right.
So I might be thirsty afterwards, and I might want a Levia, which is like a cannabis seltzer, and just go ahead and get that with some of my weed. But now I can get all those things and still not be limited for a party or whatever. And then there's also the direct administrative authority given to the chair, which is really important as well. But again, this is all of what's worked and what's not, and people realizing that when you put something into policy, you either got to revisit it because it don't work in actuality when it's applied, or you have to see the actual ramifications of it before those things get changed. So this is a good response.
Yeah, we're always watching and we're on top of that. And then we also didn't talk about the advisory committee.
Oh, yes.
We have an entire advisory committee that covers every single issue topic or every single, you know, background of folks that may be interested in the cannabis industry. Obviously, one of the folks that are on that advisory committee has a background or may have been formerly incarcerated. Like, for social justice purposes, that's really important to me. So they also too help advise the future of the cannabis industry as well.
Absolutely.
So thank y'all to everybody who's served on the advisory committee over the years. We appreciate y'all, and keep pushing, because we're really happy about where the future of the cannabis industry is going in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, and we want to see more meetings and things like that where people can participate in some of these advisory meetings. So yes, keep up the good work. We want to do more with y'all, but and getting back into it, I just want to mention two other things. The portal that was created as a result of a need for accountability for some of these businesses as well. There's been reports of illicit activity and, all the scandals from within. But we wanted to have, as a community that operates as either a consumer or a business, whatever, you need to have mechanisms so that people are accountable for their lack of abiding to the law. So that's what this portal does. Somebody said it was the snitching portal. I said, don't do that. But it is a good way to keep people accountable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then and that's not just illegal conduct. It's also if you have a concern about workers, which I think is a big one for me.
Yeah.
If I see a bud tender, anybody in a dispensary that's not getting their proper working conditions, that's a flag.
It's true. Also, too, because, again, this is product that is going to be eventually sold on the mainstream market. And so if you're being unsafe as a bud tender, you can get someone sick. You know what I mean? And so we just want to make sure that we're on point just across the board. So
absolutely. So I love that one.
Yeah.
And then the expanding of advertising outside of, just also giving delivery operators like that ability to reach a city that may be outside of the opt-in thing.
So now you can deliver anywhere now across the Commonwealth. So if you have a business that started in Boston, for example, and before you were kind of limited as to where you can go and kind of how you can move as far as your delivery is concerned, you can go as far as your gas or electric vehicle takes you. So
exactly, within the state limits.
More business.
You can't go to New Hampshire, child. You got to stay here. Okay. But that is especially important because, it gives the business delivery operators that ability to move around and expand their market share. So hopefully there's more revenue on that front as well.
Yep.
And there were so many supporters, and I just want to give credence again to some of the state reps. We got our black and brown legislators who
major shout out to Senator Gomez and Chair Donahue, House Chair. Everybody who's participated in this. I'm a really proud House member and really couldn't be happier with the leadership, particularly in the House. Chair Donahue he's on point.
Yeah, he is
very professional, and he is open to having any conversation with you that you'd like to have about this industry. We recently did not a hearing, but we did a briefing in the State House on social equity, just kind of keeping folks up to date with what's happening with the social equity trust fund. And he came by, so did Senator Gomez. He sponsored it, and I'm just really happy to have his partnership in the House. So
I agree.
Yeah.
And I love that briefing because we had so many folks in the room that are like, we need more of this.
Yeah, we're gonna do it again.
Okay, yeah,
we're gonna do it again. We're gonna take it to the community next time.
Yeah, exactly. Go outside the State House. I mean, it's good for us to go there and see the workings of it, but it's really important for us to know that you guys can come to us and meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
So that was a good one. But I also want to mention Rep. Donahue's district is also Lynn in that area.
Yeah.
And Lynn, the North
impacted as well.
Exactly. Yeah. That North Shore area, mad Dominicans.
Y'all going everywhere. Y'all going
I know. But it's definitely nice to see that representation from the North Shore and it be in different areas, not just the hub, which is here, Boston, but everywhere throughout the state. The social equity program and the social equity trust fund are two different things.
Right.
The social equity program, you have to have met specific criteria, one of them being where you live, if you're in an area of disproportionate impacts, which we talked about. Another, if you were impacted by the war on drugs, meaning you might have something on your record that is a cannabis infraction, a cannabis, anything on your record that's cannabis related. And you are someone also that maybe not you directly, but your parents, right?
Right.
And all of these different factors, along with also meeting an economic standard. So you can't have $1 million in the bank and be a social equity applicant.
Right.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is like nice. You know what I'm saying? And there's definitely, I'm sure there's some folks who are like now millionaires, right? And from that program. But applying to the Social Equity Trust Fund, you have to have qualified as an applicant, meaning you needed to have applied to the Social Equity Program, gotten your determination that you are a social equity applicant indeed, and then go ahead and apply to the Social Equity Trust Fund. So now the criteria for the Social Equity Trust Fund is that, as far as we have seen it, it has been rollouts. Like, we're waiting on, like, we'll be waiting on Beyonce to do Renaissance 3. And so for first album, it was like, okay, this is the theme, this is the criteria, whatever.
Right.
And then for the second, there was something else. And that's kind of like what it's like here.
That's how
There's different criteria for each rollout. The first one, it was only folks who are actually operating in the industry and had operating expenses. So they were prioritizing people who were the first ones in the industry, basically, and had their businesses set up. The second round, which was last year, was also inclusive of businesses who were the tier 1 folks, and that's like $25,000. You can get up to that much to prove that you are a business that is trying to establish itself as a social equity cannabis business. And then there was tier 2, which if you're in provisional, that would have been where you would land on. And if you're just in the process of attaining your license, but are stuck kind of in limbo between provisional and final, you would land there. So that was tier 2. Tier 3, you would have been already at final license and operating, and now you can qualify for much more money, which is the gag here, is that like every tier has a certain number where you can qualify for. And the reason why they're doing that is to, and I don't want to speak for the program itself, because there are some great folks that work there, like Joey Gilmore. But the idea is to basically say, we're controlling where the pot goes and giving it to where the money goes, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
And because that could be a double entendre, right? We're controlling where the money goes and then kind of giving it to people depending on where they're at in the process. So if you're already operating, you might have like overhead that's crazy, and that includes rent. So some of this money you'd be able to use for rent.
Yeah.
You'd be able to use for bills.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which wasn't always the case.
It was not.
It was not always the case, right? And so folks, in order to be able to get your license, just your plain license, you had to have an address, or you already had to have a business plan and a whole situation spelled out in your business plan, including, a location that's already pretty much like ready to lock and go in order for you to get your license. And so, but the license application process may have taken you 2-3 years to actually get that license. And so you had folks that were racking up crazy debt.
Yeah.
To be
holding
able to
on
open
to a place,
up, you know, and a lot of folks were phased out because they couldn't afford to be able to continue to pay rent or to pay the leases on some of the properties that they were owning or leasing or whatever it is. And so I'm glad that rent is a big part of that conversation, because that's something that I really wanted to see and when we first started off.
And it really does help. Yeah. I mean, if you're in tier 1, I have helped people in this scenario where you're like, okay, I have my idea, now I need to manifest it. But in order to manifest it and get into the provisional side, you need to have a location, like you said. And in order to sustain that location from X month to X month, it could be a whole year, you got to have that money.
Plus. Yeah, people were really boxed out of the industry because they couldn't continue to pay the rent. And we're talking about rent in the city of Boston, not like anywhere else. You know what I mean? So that was difficult to see. And
I would say also on that point, that's what I regret the most about the rollout of the Social Equity Trust Fund. Like, it should have gone out early on. It should have came with the industry in 2018. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, because we probably would have had stronger numbers in terms of the businesses that last and social equity representation. Yeah. Well, we got to make sure that folks support the future efforts to be able to increase the Social Equity Trust Fund, because that's how we're going to make up on all the revenue loss as it relates to that conversation. And that would be through increasing the tax percentage that goes into it? Right. Exactly. So we're at 15. We're trying to get it up there. We're trying to get to as high as we could possibly go. all these double use. Yeah, we're trying to go high, baby. But yeah, that's the goal. And so hopefully we do get to see some more of that. Yeah. And I guess the next steps, like let's talk about what happens next. The bill becomes a law by getting the signature from the governor, which happened. Yeah. And now it's a law. It's law, yeah. And so now, of course, there's going to be a grace period as far as implementation, because, you're talking about changing legislation and how things are done. You have to be able to give any given state department, for this case in point, the Cannabis Control Commission, a little bit of grace period to be able to make the changes that are actually in law that we spoke about today. And so that's going to happen fairly soon, and it's going to be good. And I look forward to, seeing it through, because writing laws and being legislature is just not only writing laws and passing them, it's actually seeing it through and making sure it's done correctly. Again, because I
supported the effort to be able to create the social equity trust fund, it doesn't just stop there. I need to know what's happening, how you guys are making sure folks are aware of the grant opportunity, who's getting money, and following it through for years and years to come. And so I'm just grateful that we're able to make that happen.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
So now really the ball's in the CCC's court.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the CCC is going to have to do some of that heavy lifting in terms of the implementation. Mm-hmm. But, we as a community, when they have these meetings, the public meetings where the community members can come in and give testimony,
right.
It is really helpful for us. And I guess another thing to kind of put on your radar, we're talking about capping the cultivation licenses. Mm-hmm. We are in this unique limbo where some of the people that qualified now for this tier of grant funding for the Social Equity Trust Fund, for example, are now having to face the cannabis moratorium. And so they may have applied with the intention of having a cultivation business and their social equity, who are now like getting that full stop. So in your advocacy, I'm going to put a plug in for those folks who are just like, yo, we need to do something about this.
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
And I guess the one way that we could do something, and this is for anybody watching over at the CCC, is like have exceptions the same way that we do for delivery, extending it for so-and-so. We should do that, especially with this round of money that was just given to people who have prospects in cultivation. If not, we should have the resources to be able to help them pivot from one idea to the next.
Yeah, just being a serious business owner who really wants to thrive and be a part of the community, like, why not? Yeah,
exactly.
I understand,
Yeah. So all of this matters to us because, again, on the eve of 420, a lot of people out there getting high. Now they're like, damn, I wish I could get more weed. Well, now you could, okay? We'll see how that gets implemented and how soon that goes. But, we're excited for that. Yeah. And, again, to thank you and to give you your flowers, Rep. Chynah Tyler.
Thank you.
You've been a very, very supportive person throughout my career in cannabis, an advocate on the legislature side. It's good to have a relationship with you, but to also know that you fundamentally do care about the community. It's just
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Icing on the cake, honey.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do it over and over again. So
right.
It is really
Keep
a true
running.
honor to be able to, again, allow for communities to be able to, generally speaking, have opportunities to be able to close the income gap. That's really what it's all about. It's not necessarily a conversation around cannabis, although it is. It's about small business owners, generational wealth. How can we close the generational wealth income gap? How can we make sure that folks are, become business owners? How can we make sure that sustainable business owners?
That part.
And just creating wealth, generally speaking. And so I'm really honored to be able to open up the doors and be a part of this conversation as a state rep.
This is great. This is great. Any plugs for you? I know you have an election coming up, right?
Oh yeah,
re-elect?
I don't know if this is I didn't know this was a platform for that.
You could do it
for sure. I mean, this is year number 10 for me. I'm up for re-election again this year, and I'm really honored to be able to get any and all support that comes my way. That looks like donating to my campaign. That looks like figuring out where you can volunteer. That looks like sharing information. That looks like many different things. Wherever you want to contribute as it relates to State Rep Chynah Tyler and the platform of the 7th Suffolk District, I'm more than happy to receive that. My political platform is very purposeful and is for the people and of the people and by the people. And so I always value any opportunity to be able to collaborate with folks, to be able to create more opportunities for people to be happy and thrive here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We heard recently that a lot of Black women are losing their jobs. We heard recently that a lot of folks are leaving the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We hear a lot about people being displaced from their homes due to gentrification. We hear a lot about folks not being able to afford to live in cities that we all grew up in, the Boston, the Lawrences of the world, and we want to make sure that the city and places that you want to be able to continue to live in and raise your kids and create generational wealth in are available for you to be able to do that. And so through my efforts in the candidacy as a continued state rep, I look forward to pivoting to making sure that that's where we're focused on with my political platform. So continue to support organizations like yours, Power to the Flower podcast, which is a social equity awardee. It just makes the world go round because now this platform is able to educate folks as to how they can get into the cannabis industry and maybe hopefully inspire folks out there that want to get involved in the cannabis industry. Like, you absolutely can do it. It's something that is definitely obtainable, just like this podcast. And so continue to stay in tune with the podcast. This is season 3,
which is crazy. We've been trying to get her on since season
episode
1,
7, the lucky number 7 Suffolk district. So it's just, you know, everything. The stars are aligned here.
Yes, they are. And I have to ask the question. This is my last question for you. What are your plans for 420? Okay, what you do for 420?
My plans for 420 is to share this reel as much as we possibly can. Share, because we want to make sure that folks are educated as it relates to what's happening with the cannabis industry, that they can get involved, or even let someone know that someone else that wants to get involved. It's all about sharing this.
That's right. Yeah. Just like you would pass the blunt, you got to pass this episode along to your people, y'all. Okay. Well, Rep Chynah, tell them, and this was a big old hug. Thank you so much. I love you more. This is so good. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm proud of you. Thank you. I love this.